99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories. Subscribe now.
In the year 2142, humanity had become a burgeoning spacefaring civilization. The invention of faster-than-light travel, known as the quantum fold drive, had opened the cosmos to exploration. Colonies sprouted on Mars, Europa, and beyond, while humanity's influence began to stretch across neighboring star systems. This rapid expansion, fueled by ambition and the unquenchable curiosity of the human spirit, soon attracted the attention of entities far more ancient and powerful. One morning, as Earth's inhabitants went about their daily lives, an unprecedented event occurred. The skies over every major city filled with a shimmering aurora, though it wasn't night. Even in the light of day, the spectacle was visible, a breathtaking cascade of colors that seemed to pulse with an eerie, otherworldly rhythm. People paused, awestruck, as the phenomenon spread across the planet, covering the globe in minutes. Then came the transmission. All at once, every communication device on Earth, televisions, radios, smartphones, even the most isolated computer terminals, flickered and displayed the same image. An emblem unfamiliar to any human eyes, a complex geometric pattern pulsating in hues of deep blue and silver. A voice, resonant and commanding, spoke in perfect unison across all channels, as though the air itself had been filled with its presence. "Humans of Earth," the voice intoned, echoing in a language that seemed to bypass all barriers of understanding. "We are the Galactic Council, the overseers of order and harmony within this galaxy. Your recent expansion has violated the boundaries established by ancient pacts, disrupting the balance of power and encroaching upon territories under our protection." The message was direct, yet delivered with an air of authority that brooked no argument. The Galactic Council was not merely a collection of alien species. It was an institution that had governed the galaxy for millennia, its power and influence unmatched. "You are hereby summoned to present yourselves before the Council," the voice continued, "to answer for these transgressions. Failure to comply will result in the immediate and total destruction of your planet. Prepare yourselves for departure. Coordinates will be provided." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the world in stunned silence. The auroras dissipated and the skies returned to normal, but the weight of the message hung heavy over the planet. Panic quickly set in. News networks scrambled to make sense of what had just occurred, while governments around the world convened emergency meetings. The United Earth Federation, UEF, the governing body representing all nations on Earth, was faced with a dire decision. At the UEF headquarters in Geneva, a sense of urgency filled the air. The planet's most powerful leaders, military generals, scientists, and diplomats gathered in the war room, a vast chamber lined with holographic displays showing real-time data from every corner of the globe. "We have no choice but to respond," President Elijah Carter stated, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "This council, whoever they are, represents a threat we cannot ignore. We need to send a delegation, but it must be one that speaks for all of humanity." There was no dissent. The threat was too great, the stakes too high. After hours of debate, the UEF assembled a team that included diplomats, scientists, and military personnel, carefully selected for their expertise and ability to represent Earth's interests. The flagship of humanity's fleet, the Elysium, was prepared for the journey. A sleek vessel equipped with the latest in quantum technology, the Elysium was humanity's pride, a symbol of their achievements and aspirations. Captain Elisa Drake, a decorated officer with experience in deep space exploration, was chosen to lead the mission. She stood tall before the gathered crew, her face reflecting the determination that burned within her. The weight of the world was quite literally on her shoulders. "This is a mission of peace," Captain Drake addressed her crew, "but we must be prepared for anything. We don't know what awaits us at the coordinates provided, but know this. We go not just as representatives of Earth, but as ambassadors for all of humanity. Our actions will determine the future of our species." The crew boarded the Elysium with a mixture of fear and resolve. As the ship's engines hummed to life and the quantum fold drive activated, the crew felt a sudden lurch as space itself twisted around them, propelling the ship across light years in an instant. The stars blurred into streaks of light, and the journey to the unknown began. The Elysium entered a region of space uncharted by human explorers, a vast emptiness that seemed to swallow all light. The crew watched their instruments nervously, aware that they were venturing far beyond the familiar territories of their colonies and allies. The coordinates led them to a point in space where a massive, hollowed-out asteroid awaited, a structure unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The asteroid was colossal, its surface covered in a latticework of glowing lines and symbols, pulsating with an energy that defied explanation. It was as though the asteroid itself was alive, humming with the power of the civilizations it housed. Massive docking ports opened in response to their arrival, and the Elysium was drawn inside. Once docked, the UEF delegation was escorted by an escort of robotic sentinels through the labyrinthine corridors of the asteroid. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, displaying shifting patterns and symbols that no human mind could fully comprehend. The air was thick with an energy that made the hairs on their skin stand on end. At last they entered the Grand Chamber, a vast hall filled with representatives from species far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Some floated, others slithered, and a few were barely visible, existing as shifting clouds of light. At the center of the chamber stood the presiding chancellor, a figure cloaked in shadows, whose presence radiated authority and power. The chancellor's voice, deep and resonant, filled the chamber. "Humans, you stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your actions. Your expansion has not gone unnoticed, and now you must face the consequences." The chamber fell silent as the human delegation braced themselves for what was to come. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and the decisions made in the next few moments would determine the fate of their entire species. The summoning had begun. The atmosphere within the Grand Chamber was electric, crackling with an energy that was almost palpable. The human delegation, led by Captain Elisa Drake, stood in a semicircle at the center of the vast hall, surrounded by representatives of the Galactic Council. The chamber was an awe-inspiring sight, with its towering pillars of translucent crystal, each one pulsating with a soft ethereal light that cast shifting patterns across the walls. The ceiling, a dome of swirling galaxies, seemed to stretch into infinity as if the entire cosmos was contained within this one room. The council members, representing a myriad of civilizations far more advanced than humanity, sat in their respective seats. Each species was more alien and incomprehensible than the last. There were beings of pure energy, their forms constantly shifting in kaleidoscopic colors, towering insectoid creatures with glistening carapaces and multiple eyes, aquatic life forms suspended in levitating bubbles of water, and others that defied description, their forms bending the very fabric of reality around them. At the center of this assembly was the presiding chancellor, a figure cloaked in shadows, its form only partially visible. The chancellor's face was obscured by a hood, revealing only two glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the souls of those who looked into them. When the chancellor spoke, it was as if the voice came from all directions at once, reverberating through the minds of everyone present. "Humans," the chancellor began, its voice resonating with an ancient authority that demanded attention. "You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your transgressions. Your species, in its reckless expansion, has violated the boundaries of countless civilizations, disregarding treaties and disrupting the delicate balance of power that we have maintained for eons." Captain Drake, standing at the forefront of the human delegation, stepped forward. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice was steady as she spoke. "Presiding Chancellor, esteemed members of the Council, we come before you with the utmost respect for your authority. We acknowledge that our expansion may have caused concern, but it was never our intention to disrupt the order of the galaxy. We seek only to explore, to learn, and to coexist peacefully with other civilizations." A murmur rippled through the council, a chorus of voices in languages and sounds that no human could understand. The chancellor raised a hand, and the chamber fell silent once more. "Intentions matter little in the face of consequences," the chancellor replied, its tone colder now. "Your actions have brought instability to regions that have long been under our protection. The balance of power is not a trivial matter. It is the foundation upon which peace in this galaxy is built." One of the council members, a towering being with a crystalline body that refracted light into a spectrum of colors, spoke next. Its voice was high-pitched and melodic, yet carried an unmistakable edge of accusation. "Your colonies on the Outer Rim have encroached upon the territories of the Zelthra Collective. Their biospheres have been compromised by your mining operations, causing irreversible damage to their ecosystems. What defense do you offer for this?" Dr. Marcus Ito, the leading scientist of the human delegation, stepped forward. "We were unaware that those regions were inhabited," he explained, his voice laced with both regret and determination. "Had we known, we would have immediately ceased operations and sought to make amends. We have the technology to repair ecological damage. We can help restore what was lost." The crystalline being's eyes narrowed and it spoke with clear skepticism. Promises of repair do not erase the suffering caused. The Zelthra have been driven to the brink of extinction by your actions. How can you compensate for a loss so great? The exchange continued, each accusation met with explanations and offers of reparations, but it became increasingly clear that the Council was not interested in apologies or technological solutions. The members of the Council were united in their view that humanity's transgressions had gone beyond simple errors. They were a fundamental threat to the established order of the galaxy. Finally, after what felt like hours of deliberation, the presiding chancellor raised its hand again, signaling the end of the debate. The chamber fell into a silence so deep that it seemed as though even the light from the pillars dimmed in anticipation. "The time for discussion is over," the chancellor declared. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision. In order to preserve the balance of power and to ensure that humanity understands its place within the galaxy, we demand tribute." A shiver ran through the human delegation. They had anticipated some form of reparation, but the word tribute carried a weight that none of them had expected. The chancellor's eyes glowed brighter as it continued. "1/3 of your population will be required to serve the council. They will be taken as laborers, soldiers, and servants to work in our colonies and fleets. This tribute will ensure that your species understands the gravity of its actions and the consequences of defying the established order." A stunned silence followed the chancellor's words. The magnitude of the demand was incomprehensible. To sacrifice 1/3 of Earth's population was to condemn billions to servitude, a fate worse than death for many. Captain Drake, struggling to maintain her composure, spoke out, her voice laced with desperation. "Presiding Chancellor, this demand is beyond what we can accept. We came here seeking to atone for our mistakes, but to surrender 1/3 of our people, that is something we cannot do. Please, there must be another way." The Chancellor's gaze bore into her, unyielding. "Your alternatives are simple: comply or face annihilation. The Council does not make demands lightly, nor do we offer second chances. You have one Earth day to decide. Should you refuse, your world will be obliterated." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The members of the human delegation exchanged looks of horror and disbelief. The Chancellor's ultimatum left no room for negotiation. The survival of Earth now hinged on a choice that seemed impossible to make. The Council members began to rise from their seats, their forms dissolving into streams of light, mist, or shadow as they departed the chamber. Soon, only the presiding Chancellor remained, its glowing eyes fixed on the humans for a moment longer before it, too, vanished into the ether. The human delegation was left standing in the empty chamber, the weight of the decision pressing down on them like a physical force. Captain Drake turned to her team, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to return to Earth. We have to tell them, and we have to decide." With heavy hearts and grim expressions, the delegation made their way back to the Elysium. The journey home was a silent one, each member lost in their own thoughts, grappling with the enormity of the choice before them. As the ship approached Earth, the planet loomed large in the view screen, a blue and green orb suspended in the void. Beautiful, fragile, and now more vulnerable than ever. The Elysium descended into Earth's atmosphere, and as the delegation prepared to deliver the grim news, one thing was clear. Whatever choice they made, nothing would ever be the same again. The tribunal had spoken. The return of the Elysium to Earth was met with an atmosphere of palpable tension. The once bustling and vibrant United Earth Federation headquarters in Geneva had become a fortress of anxiety. World leaders, military strategists, scientists, and the public awaited the delegation's return with bated breath. They knew that the delegation carried the weight of humanity's future on their shoulders, and their report would determine the course of history. As the Elysium touched down on the landing pad, Captain Elisa Drake and her team disembarked, their faces grim and etched with exhaustion. They were immediately escorted to the war room, where the UEF's top officials awaited. The room was filled with murmurs and the low hum of holographic projectors displaying various scenarios, none of which were promising. President Elijah Carter stood at the head of the long table, his face a mask of concern. "Captain Drake," he greeted her, his voice steady but strained. "What is the Council's demand?" Captain Drake took a deep breath and looked around the room at the expectant faces of Earth's leaders. She recounted the events that had transpired on the Council's asteroid base, the grandeur of the chamber, the presence of the alien species, and the chilling ultimatum delivered by the presiding Chancellor. When she reached the part about the tribute demand, The room fell silent. 1/3 of our population? President Carter repeated, disbelief in his voice. They expect us to hand over billions of people to become slaves? That's monstrous. Indeed, agreed General Maria Vasquez, the UEF's top military commander. We cannot comply with this demand. The Council is asking us to commit an atrocity against our own people. A murmur of agreement spread through the room, but with it came an overwhelming sense of dread. Refusing the Council's demand was tantamount to signing Earth's death warrant. Dr. Marcus Ito, who had been part of the delegation, spoke up. There might be another way. All eyes turned to him as he continued. We've been developing a new experimental technology, something that could level the playing field, or at least give us a fighting chance. What kind of technology? President Carter asked, a note of cautious hope in his voice. A quantum destabilizer, Dr. Ito explained. It's a device that can disrupt the energy fields that power advanced technologies. It's still in the experimental phase, but if we could deploy it at the heart of the Council's base, we might be able to disable their defenses long enough to force a negotiation, or at the very least, buy us some time. General Vasquez frowned. This sounds highly dangerous. If the destabilizer is as powerful as you say, it could have unintended consequences, possibly even catastrophic ones. Dr. Ito nodded. There are risks, no doubt, but we're out of options. The Council has made it clear they won't negotiate. If we do nothing, we lose everything. If we fight, there's a chance, however slim, that we could survive. The room fell into a tense silence as everyone considered the proposal. The choice before them was stark. Submit to the Council's demands and sacrifice 1/3 of humanity, or defy the Council and risk total annihilation. Finally, President Carter spoke, his voice resolute. We cannot and will not submit to tyranny. We are not just fighting for our lives. We're fighting for the future of our species, for our right to exist as a free and independent civilization. We'll use the quantum destabilizer. The decision was made. Preparations began immediately. The Elysium was quickly refitted to carry the destabilizer, its cargo bay reinforced to house the experimental device. The ship's crew was briefed on the plan: infiltrate the Council's base, deploy the destabilizer, and escape before the Council could react. The mission was incredibly dangerous, with a high likelihood of failure, but the crew of the Elysium were ready to sacrifice everything to save their world. As the crew readied themselves, Captain Drake took a moment to record a message to be transmitted back to Earth, should the mission fail. This is Captain Elisa Drake of the Elysium. If you're hearing this, then we were unsuccessful in our mission. Know that we fought with everything we had to protect Earth. We do this not out of hatred or fear, but out of love for our people, for our planet, and for the future generations who deserve a chance to live free. Whatever happens, humanity will endure. Never forget that. The message was saved, and Captain Drake joined her crew on the bridge. The ship's engines roared to life, and the Elysium once again set course for the coordinates provided by the Council. This time, however, they weren't going as diplomats. They were going as warriors. As the ship traveled through the quantum fold, the crew prepared themselves mentally and physically for the task ahead. The ship's corridors were filled with a somber determination. Each member of the crew knew the stakes. They were not just fighting for their own survival, but for the survival of their entire species. The Elysium emerged from the quantum fold near the same colossal asteroid where the Galactic Council had made their demands. The asteroid loomed ahead, its surface still glowing with the strange energy patterns that had awed and intimidated the crew on their first visit. Now those same patterns were targets, weak points in the Council's defenses that they hoped to exploit. The Elysium approached the docking bay, broadcasting the codes the Council had provided for safe passage. The ship glided into the docking port just as it had before, but this time the crew was on high alert, ready to act at a moment's notice. As soon as the ship docked, Captain Drake gave the order. Deploy the destabilizer. The device was activated, its quantum pulses beginning to build in intensity. The crew watched in tense silence as the destabilizer's readings climbed. The ship's sensors picked up the effects almost immediately. The energy fields that powered the Council's technology began to fluctuate, the patterns on the walls flickering and dimming. The destabilizer was working, but then something went wrong. Alarms blared as the destabilizer's readings spiked beyond expected levels. "Captain, the destabilizer is overloading," one of the engineers shouted. "It's creating a feedback loop. If it continues, it could tear the asteroid apart." "Shut it down," Captain Drake ordered, but it was too late. The destabilizer had already reached a critical point. The quantum pulses spiraled out of control, amplifying the energy fluctuations throughout the asteroid. The entire structure began to shudder, and the glow of the energy fields turned from a soft blue to a violent red. "We need to get out of here. Now!" Captain Drake commanded. The Elysium's engines roared as the ship tried to break free from the docking clamps, but the destabilizer's pulses had disrupted the controls. The ship lurched and shuddered as the crew fought to regain control, but the gravitational anomaly created by the destabilizer was too strong. The asteroid's core, destabilized by the energy surges, was collapsing in on itself, creating a vortex that threatened to consume everything within reach. "Brace for impact!" Captain Drake shouted as the ship was pulled toward the collapsing core. The crew held on as the Elysium was caught in the gravitational pull, spiraling toward the singularity forming at the asteroid's heart. On Earth, the UEF watched in horror as the telemetry from the Elysium went dark. The last images captured were of the asteroid imploding, a flash of light brighter than 1,000 suns. And then nothing. Silence fell over the war room as the realization sank in. The Elysium was gone, along with any hope of negotiating with the Council. Earth was left to face the consequences of defiance, but no retaliation came. Days passed, then weeks, but the Council did not return. There were no signs of alien fleets descending upon Earth, no ultimatums delivered. The asteroid, along with the Council, had vanished from the galaxy, leaving humanity to wonder what they had truly unleashed. The loss of the Elysium and its crew was a devastating blow, but Earth had survived. As the world mourned the brave souls who had sacrificed themselves, a new resolve took root. Humanity had faced an unimaginable threat and lived to tell the tale. The galaxy was vast and danger still lurked in the darkness, but humanity had proven that they would not go quietly into the night. The stars above, once symbols of endless possibilities, were now reminders of the cost of defiance. But they were also a testament to humanity's indomitable spirit, the will to fight for freedom, for survival, and for the right to carve their own destiny in the vast expanse of space. And so, Earth began to rebuild, always watchful, always prepared, and forever changed by the events of that fateful encounter. The Council's silence was ominous, a lingering question that haunted the minds of those who had lived through the crisis. But as humanity looked to the stars, they knew one thing for certain. They would face whatever came next with the same courage and resolve that had brought them through the darkest hour. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. The quiet that settled over Earth after the destruction of the Elysium was both eerie and unsettling. For days, the world held its breath, expecting the worst. People looked to the skies, fearing the arrival of a fleet of alien warships, the harbingers of the Galactic Council's wrath. But as time passed and the stars remained undisturbed, the tension began to ease, replaced by a deep, gnawing uncertainty. In the aftermath of the mission, the United Earth Federation was left to pick up the pieces. The loss of the Elysium and its crew was a tragedy that weighed heavily on the hearts of every human. Memorials were erected in honor of the brave men and women who had given their lives to protect their planet. Captain Elisa Drake became a symbol of heroism, her final message to Earth broadcast across the globe as a reminder of the sacrifice made for the sake of freedom. But the question remained, what had become of the Galactic Council? Had the quantum destabilizer truly obliterated them, or had it simply driven them into hiding, biding their time for a future retaliation? The uncertainty was maddening. Governments and scientists scrambled to understand the ramifications of what had transpired. Surveillance systems scanned the galaxy for any signs of the Council or their technology, but nothing was found. The asteroid, once a hub of unimaginable power and influence, was gone, leaving no trace. As weeks turned into months, the global mood began to shift. Relief at having survived the immediate threat mixed with a lingering sense of unease. The destruction of the Council had saved Earth, but at what cost? The galaxy, once a place of wonder and discovery, now seemed fraught with unseen dangers, and humanity was more alone than ever before. The United Earth Federation, recognizing the need for preparedness in this new era of uncertainty, embarked on a massive overhaul of Earth's defenses. Research into advanced weaponry and technology was accelerated, and efforts to establish deeper alliances with other spacefaring civilizations were intensified. Humanity had faced the brink of extinction, and it was determined never to be so vulnerable again. Yet even as Earth fortified itself, questions about the wider consequences of their actions persisted. The Council had been the linchpin of galactic order for millennia, and its sudden disappearance could trigger chaos across the galaxy. Reports began to trickle in from human colonies on the Outer Rim and from other species about increased instability. Pirate attacks became more frequent, rogue factions began seizing territories, and long-standing treaties were being challenged. Without the Council's oversight, the delicate balance of power was starting to unravel. Dr. Marcus Ito, who had been part of the delegation to the Council and the mind behind the quantum destabilizer, was among those most haunted by these developments. He spent his days in a secluded laboratory, poring over the data from the mission, trying to understand the full impact of the destabilizer's pulse. His nights were plagued by nightmares of a galaxy spiraling into chaos, of dark forces emerging from the shadows to fill the void left by the Council. One day, while analyzing the final moments of the Elysium's mission, Dr. Ito noticed something strange in the data. Buried within the chaotic energy readings was a faint signal, something that didn't belong. It was weak, barely detectable, but it was there, a message, or at least the remnants of one, encoded within the quantum fluctuations just before the asteroid's collapse. He worked tirelessly to decode the signal, and when he finally succeeded, what he uncovered sent a chill down his spine. The signal was a transmission from the Council, a fragment of a message sent just as the destabilizer had reached its peak. The message was incomplete, garbled, but one phrase was clear: "We are not the end." Dr. Ito immediately contacted President Carter and the UEF's top officials. The message was relayed, its implications impossible to ignore. The Council, or at least some part of it, had survived. Or worse, the Council had never been the true power behind the Galactic Order. Perhaps they were merely enforcers for something far more ancient, something that had now been awakened by humanity's defiance. The revelation threw Earth's leaders into a state of alarm. Preparations for defense were redoubled, and diplomatic channels were opened with every known civilization in an effort to piece together what might be coming. But there were no clear answers, only more questions, and a growing sense of foreboding. In the months that followed, strange occurrences began to happen across the galaxy. Entire star systems went dark, their suns extinguished without warning. Planets that had once been thriving hubs of life were found abandoned, their populations vanished without a trace. Ancient ruins, long dormant, started to emit signals and energies that defied understanding, hinting at forces far older than the Council. Earth itself was not immune to these phenomena. In remote parts of the world, people reported seeing strange lights in the sky, hearing voices that seemed to come from the Earth itself, and witnessing inexplicable events that defied the laws of nature. Scientists and military personnel investigated, but the phenomena eluded explanation, leaving only fear in their wake. As these mysteries multiplied, humanity's initial relief at surviving the Council began to give way to a deeper fear, that their actions had unleashed something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The galaxy was changing, and Earth was at the center of that change, whether they wanted to be or not. In the face of this growing uncertainty, President Carter addressed the world in a somber broadcast. "We stand at a crossroads," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of leadership. "Our defiance of the Galactic Council saved us from immediate destruction, but it has also placed us on a path filled with unknown dangers. We do not know what lies ahead, but we do know this: we must face it together, with courage and resolve. Whatever the future holds, humanity will stand as one, ready to defend our world and our way of life." The broadcast ended, but the sense of foreboding remained. Across the planet, people prepared for whatever might come, drawing strength from their shared determination. The world was more united than it had ever been, forged by the fires of adversity into a civilization ready to face the unknown. But in the quiet moments, when the sky was clear and the stars twinkled overhead, there was a lingering question that haunted every mind. What had they unleashed, and when would it come for them? As Earth braced for the future, the galaxy watched in silence. The once clear order now fractured, the rules rewritten. The balance of power was gone, and in its place was a void waiting to be filled. Forces long dormant were awakening, drawn by the ripples humanity had sent through the cosmos. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something was stirring. Something ancient, something powerful, something that had been waiting for this very moment. The Council had been only the beginning. The true challenge was yet to come. The story of humanity's defiance would be written in the stars, and the final chapter was still to be told.